Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Paul from Prior Witness. Hopefully everyone's having a fantastic day today. This is going to be part 2 of the how to incorporate the multi-effects unit into your rig. I'm going to use the Headrush MX5 as an example of that. This video is really going to be more tuned for folks who have the MX5, but the same principles will apply to those of you who have other multi-effects units. So just stick with me here, and hopefully you learn something at the end of the day. The primary purpose of this video is to show you how I incorporate the MX5 and how I use it, and how I use the various amps within the MX5. Now, real quick, my signal chain is a few pedals coming in from a fuzz unit into a wah, into a whammy, into a Maxon unit, and then the Maxon OD9 goes into the input of the Headrush MX5 here. And then from the Headrush, an effects loop is in play here. The effects loop actually contains 2 sources. It's my Mesa Boogie dual rectifier on channel 1, the green channel, the clean channel, and that is blended with the Rev G3 G series pedal in the red aggression mode. So if you're wondering there. And then from there, going out is going into a TC Electronic 3rd Dimension chorus pedal, and then a Wampler Metaverse delay pedal, and then from the delay pedal is going into the effects return of my amplifier. And that is very critical to understand, that it goes from the effects return into the outermost portion of your rig, because you want this thing to take over the preamp section of your amp. And the only thing that should be going in front of the amp is via the effects loop on your multi-effects pedal, and in this case, your Headrush. So let's get going. I've set up a few presets for you to see, to get an idea of how I use my unit, and we'll go from there. I'm going to take you through some of the inner workings going on. So first off, we're going to hit this lovely little in button here. We're going to double click on that. I have a preset made up. This is very key. You want to set up your input levels. And for me, I always have the input level set below 0 at some point. It's going to depend on your guitar. It's going to depend on your style of play. For me, the guitar you're hearing is... that is ESP LTD MH400. I wish they still made these things. It's got EMG pickups in it, active pickups, 81 and 85 pickups. A lot of my guitars have a very similar pickup arrangement. Most of my guitars are, the Les Paul style with, hot pickups or fairly hot, passive, active pickups. That's what I usually play with. Not a big fan of the Stratocaster sound. I know. Heresy, right? But, I'm more of a fan of that Les Paul sound. And so, but I mention these things because it is important that you understand your input level gains. It's so critical, because if this thing is too high, you're going to clip everything and everything's going to sound really mushy and muddy, and you don't want that. Gate release is at 4 milliseconds. I have it fairly low. The gate on your Headrush MX5 is very powerful going in, so you want to make sure that you're not totally squishing your signals going in, and you want to make sure that your signals have a little room to breathe, but at the same time, you want it to be able to catch those humming sounds as quickly as possible, but not so quick that you're squelching any of the barely active stuff. Like for me. See how I was just very light on there, but it was still catching it. All right, so backing up. So here's our signal chain. I like to use a series signal chain with my guitar. Bass, it's completely different. Bass, I actually like the layers there. I like the parallel thing going on, but here it's just completely in series. Start off with, you got a drop tune pedal here, and as I've explained in previous videos, I always keep that there just in case I feel like being lazy and I don't want to go down a step or two on a guitar. I just want to play. Audience doesn't notice most of the time, and then if you're just practicing or playing by yourself, it's not a big deal. So it's not the best drop tune sound, but just to give you an idea, this is in drop C, and here it is activated. It's just one step down, one half step down, sorry. So it should sound like in B. Here we go. So that's what it sounds like. And I just, click that on or off depending on, what set I'm playing, all that stuff. From there, you'll see a K drive that's simulating a clon. I personally like how the clon sounds in this thing. You got to experiment with your overdrives and your multi-effects pedal. You really do. Some of them sound better than others, and you know, I've had line 6s, I've had zooms. This is my, you know, Headrush here, and they're all different flavors, and no one is better than the other, I think. I really do think it comes down to your ear, so just pay attention to that. I have it for lead tones. That's what I use mine for. I'll get into that here in a minute. The effects loop, I'll show you what's going on in the effects loop. Mix is at 100. I don't blend any of my guitar dry tone at all. It's all mixed in. Send is at 0. Return is a little bit hot at 2.5. You got to experiment with that. You know, for my pedals, it's just for your pedal of choice that goes in there. It's just really going to depend. Now, this effects loop is going into my guitar amp, so, you know, that's part of it. The other part is I'm blending my Rev G3 pedal, which has its own volume control on it. So, you know, I have some flexibility. And then delays at 0. Next are the amps. Now, you notice I have these, I've got 2 amps going on here. This is for my clean tones here. We'll click on one of these. I'm blending a jazz clean, the Roland Jazz Chorus 84 here, and here's my settings. Distortion at 0, volume 50, high treble 73, treble 69, mid 37. Bass is at 55, reverb 17, chorus is off, rate is at 8%, depth is 30. Of course, it really doesn't matter for depth since we don't have the chorus on. But if you do have the chorus, those will be highly important settings for you. And stereo is off because everything's going to be mono because everything's going into my guitar amp. Which is another thing. I'm glad I came across that. Forgot to mention that. This is all mono. Here, we're looking at a replica of one of the Fender amps on this. Here are my settings here on the 64 Black Vibe. We got volume at 50, bright is on, vibrato is off, treble is sitting there at 70, middle is straight up at 50, bass 43. And because vibrato is off, all these other settings really don't matter. And we have those blended together. From there, there's a few pedals here that are very important to my clean tone. I'll go ahead and switch a scene on here so they'll light up and I'll show you. So here we got a graphic EQ. This is a stock brighter preset. I have it set to. It's going to depend on your amp too. Like this is going into the effects return of my amp. So essentially these 2 clean amps are taking over the preamp section of my amplifier. And I find my amplifier is a little dark when it comes to emulating some of this clean tone. So I brighten up here with a little EQ. Love chorus on my cleans. If I could, I would build chorus directly into my clean section of my amplifier. I rarely go clean without some kind of modulation. But here's how my chorus settings are. Rate is at 0.6 hertz. Depth is sitting at 45. Mix width at 53. Feedback 0. Experiment with that too. You get some pretty cool sounds there. Finally, I have a compressor after this. The reason why the compressor is sitting after my amp and not before, a lot of people like to put their compressor right before they hit everything. And I know I've said that in previous videos too. You want your compressor as one of the first things to hit your guitar. But I'm not using this compressor as like a guitar compressor per se. In the Headrush unit, it defines this compressor unit as more along akin of the lines of a studio rack compressor, kind of like when you are in the studio and you're recording. So I treat this compressor differently. I treat it as capturing all the cleans, all of my modulation, and making sure all the levels are even before going out into my amplifier. So my compressor is set up in that fashion. And so I've set it up very similar to how you would see it in a studio setting. And that's why the numbers are the way they are. So threshold is at 26 dB. Attack is at 4. Gain is at 6 to raise it back up. One of the things I find annoying about Headrush, the Headrush clean amps, they're pretty quiet. If you try to turn up the volume a little bit, they start to get some dirt in there that shouldn't be there. And so in order to compensate for that, I leave them at, you know, roughly 50% volume or 40% volume, and then I will raise that volume up by having it hit. Cannot talk. Words are hard. I'll have it hit a compressor. Ratios at 4, release at 50 milliseconds, sneeze at 15. After this, you see a gate here. That's to capture the effects loop going on here with my distortion tones with the Mesa and the Rev combining forces. So I have a little gate here. The gate's set at -35. Release at 4 milliseconds. Noise filter all the way down at -120. I also have a reverb here for the clean tones. I like a little reverb action going on with my clean tones. Here's a little look at the air reverb setting. There's a lot of reverbs on this pedal. They're all fantastic. But for stock tones, this is what I usually go for. Time is at 0.7 seconds. Size 49%. Color at 2679 hertz. Mix at 40. And tails are off. We can turn that on too. The only reason why you want tails on is if you want the reverb, blending in with, back with the other signal. Here, I don't want that. Nothing wrong with that. All right, this is running a little long. I'll get to a few other tones to give you an idea of what's going on. But here, real quick, here is what my dirty tone sounds like. Drop C. And then I have scene set up. So here's the clean tone. And then a lead tone. So that's the lead tone. Now real quick, so I've set up scenes for all of these. So if we go to hardware assign, I'll show you, these are the scenes I've got set up. So if we go to edit, here's something of what's going on scene 1, and then here's the scene 1, 2 on this patch here of what everything's going on. We just got a chorus toggle here in case I want to turn it off or on. And then here's the lead scene tone. And that's all that's going on there. I got a few other presets I'll show you real quick. I've got one where instead of having the clean amps as a Fender and a Jazz, I've got a Vox going on here. And again, so one of the things I like about the Vox is it will break up if you go down. But again, I've got the same compressor capturing that so that I don't lose volume. It just cleans it up, and that's it. And here's my settings. Volume at 65, brilliant volume 50, tremolo is obviously off, treble at 65, bass at 41, and the rest doesn't matter because we don't have any of that other stuff going on there. Very similar setup, easy peasy there. What we can build on that, here's a little vibrato going on in the front. So we got a vibe phaser here. And again, we got the vibe phaser in the front. Everything's the same. And then we want to go, and if you don't want to use your amp at all, you want to just take over the preamp completely. Here's kind of a setup what I use. Like if I want to just have some nice Marshall 800 tones, I can do this. And that's kind of what that sounds like. And here's what's going on here with the JCM 800. Master volume at 61, preamp at 80, bass 73, presence a little bit, 11, mids at 80, treble all the way down at 19. And it's going to depend on your amp too, how it captures those amps. But hopefully that gives you a better idea. This was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. But this gives you an idea of what things you can do. And remember, at the end of the day, the output has to go into your effects return amp for you to take advantage of all these things. Hey guys, real quick, I also almost forgot to show you guys this. So you also want to maintain your output levels as best as you can. I'm on my Vox setting right now, and as you can see, my rig volume is sitting at 15 dB, and that's just to bring everything back up. I like hitting my amp, the effects return, just before it gets to the red. So here, so there you can hear it going to that orange spot right there, and that's okay. If you get one red or two, it's not a big deal. I did want to show you this as well. So here's on my regular stock preset here. When I click on the out button, you'll notice that the rig volume is much significantly lower here. It's sitting at 9 dB, and that's just the nature of you know, the preset, the amps, everything that's happening. It's not consistent across the board, so you gotta experiment with it. And the best way to experiment with your volume levels is, you know, as you're fiddling around with your amp settings, don't be afraid to click on that out button there and really mess with those output settings and get an idea of where your amp is going. So it's just really important. I wanted to get that in. All right. So thanks again for listening and watching. I hope you learned something with this. And with that, rock on. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks, guys.